All right, it's 7:05 and you're good to go.
Okay. So we're going to just wait a few more minutes and see, because I know Dave. Oh wait, actually, is. Oh wait, where did Joan go? Oh, there's Joan. Oh, there's Mark. Oh, look at that. Oh, we are good to go. Does anybody else hear like a weird squawking after I speak?
Yes.
All right, let's try this.
That was getting really weird. How about now?
Better.
Okay. Well, we'll go with better then, as opposed to good. Okay. Well, we have everybody there. I don't know why I was missing Joan and Mark from my screen, but it's the vagaries of Zoom.
I can't see him either.
Oh no, I switched to the Brady Bunch view, and then I saw everybody. Oh, and there's Dave.
You're muted.
Ah, hello.
We should be. Okay, so I guess we will call this to order. So today we got Gina, got Joan, we got Mark, Dave, and Kim, and we'll start this once again at 7. Okay, so I found out that I actually have the ability. What is this?
Whatever it is, it's the feedback coming off of Kim's line. So Kim, if you don't mind, I'm going to mute you temporarily. And then if you have questions, I'll unmute you. Or if you're using a cell phone and can mute yourself.
I can mute myself. I do have a couple comments on the minutes, so that's coming up quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so that's what we have. So you should be, I'm sharing the minutes. I struck out, Kim, the part that says, me send a link to the document. I don't know where that came from and why it sounds like Cookie Monster all of a sudden. So if that's one of your problems, don't worry, that is crossed out. What else do you got, Kim?
Well, on the July one, creeks is spelled as if it were creaking. So CREEKS.
All right. We'll
July.
I'll fix that.
And August, there's residents. I think it's written as ENCE, and I think you mean ENTS, as in people.
Probably. Lousy spell check. All right.
Other than that, substance seems fine. So.
Okay. About the for the minutes then of August 11th. Or is that what we were?
Yeah, that's the one with residents in it. The last paragraph, I think.
Oh yeah, it was city resident. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. Residents. There we go. If it doesn't have the little red squiggly line under it, I consider it a win. So. All right. Do we have anything else? Thank you, Kim.
Is Yearly's last name spelled correctly? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that I double checked that.
It is correct.
It is correct. Okay. Yes, I'm also trying to remember. He seems to want to go by Steven, so we'll go with that. So yes. So any other issues with the minutes? Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve said minutes?
So moved.
Okay, Gina moves. And do I have a second?
Unmuted second. Second.
All right. Dave comes off mute to second the emotion. Not the second the emotion. That is a song. Second the motion. It's a good song, though. And so let's have a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes as amended?
Aye.
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 Okay, we have all ayes. Fantastic. Okay. So I will now stop that share. And we will go then on to the agenda. So I do not believe we have any petitioners. And I have not received any new correspondence from anybody that would be pertaining to the to the board. So does anybody else received any correspondence that would be?
Verbal regarding the chickens, we were going to get there later, I gather, right?
Yeah, we'll get to chickens. Well, actually, no, we're not going to get to chickens. Chickens are not on the agenda. So what's up with chickens, Dave?
Well, I talked to a fellow that is raising chickens, and he said that it's very, apparently, I was trying to get back on with you guys, but section 5 in the prepared document that we got in the email, that document says something about not allowing the chickens to scratch or something to cause erosion. He said that's impossible. He said that's what chickens do. And we discussed it. I discussed it with him, and I said maybe it should be rephrased to say something that chickens are scratching. Well, they're going to scratch, but the chickens should be not placed on a slope. When you scratch it to the bare soil, which is inevitable, then the slope will cause the erosion. That it's ridiculous to think chickens in the ground are not going to scratch it bare. They do. So I didn't get a chance. He just contacted me a couple hours ago. That makes sense?
All it says is,
Section 5.
and this is an amendment that Steve was putting forward. The enclosure area must be well drained and cleaned, offer access to living vegetation, be resistant to erosion by activities of the birds, and provide access to water, shelter, and
He
feeding.
doesn't think the chickens, if they're outside, you can't stop them from I mean, his lawn gets torn up. I've seen it. And
Well-
the chickens do that. That's what they do. They dig down.
Okay, well, yeah, I wasn't really going to worry too much about the chickens part of that. So that was, I just included that so that you guys can see where it all sort of fit together with Stevens.
Okay.
I think so. So yeah, okay, we'll get back to that then under when we get to that bit. And
And I think mention it to Steve. Steve, is the one that came up with the, Shirley came up with the.
yeah, I'll
I don't think we need to discuss it. I think just mention to him that it says chickens, you just read it, should have an impervious, which means cement or something.
no.
I mean,
It just says be resistant to.
well, his point is it's impossible. If you've got chickens outside on the grass, they're right on the grass. Away at the grass, they're going to get down into the dirt.
Right. I'm not sure if that's exactly what he means by that. I will ask him.
I think that's all you need to do is converse with him a little bit, and if it,
Again, that was not something that I was going to put forward. I was going to separate
but
part anyway.
just on a one-on-one, you can talk to him. I can tell you more about it if he wants to talk to the individual, but he just was a little concerned about that.
Just for a point of clarification, we have a code right now that addresses chickens. I don't think that was the exact wording of the code, correct?
No, in the current, so what Dave, I'm sorry, so let me jump to that right now. Okay, so what Dave is referring to is, from what I can tell, is this part right here, which is the red, which was a proposed thing that Stephen had put in for the chicken part of the potential amendment. As I said, I wasn't planning on discussing that or even bringing forward from the environmental board just now about that. I even thought about deleting all of it before I sent it off to you guys, but I thought I would show you what Stephen has been thinking about, and we can put that off to another discussion, should we wish to, about chickens.
Well, I suggest you just talk to him about it, and if he wants to talk to the chicken raiser, I can put him in touch.
Yeah, I think I'll check in with him on that and see what he meant by that wording and see if what's going on. But at the moment, I'm not really considering that part of today's agenda, but we can certainly put that later on. But so thank you for bringing that to my attention. That is some wording where I can see where that would be. But that is not in the code as it stands. As it stands in the code, it's not going to be a problem.
Okay.
I think Stephen just likes to think new ways of bettering the code, from what I can tell, which is always a good thing. And thank God somebody wants to do it. All right. So do we have any other correspondence that we wish to talk about? No. All right. Well, then moving right along on our agenda, folks, we have Mark, Council Member Davies will report to us.
My goodness, so official. I would love to be able to sit here and tell you about all these wonderful environmentally related and connected things that we're doing. And I feel as though the last couple of meetings I've said the same thing, but truly it's been the case is that so much of our focus has been COVID related, from the standpoint of really scrutinizing our budget and trying to make sure we're trying to hold spending down, frankly, with the effort to try to make sure that we are able to keep things going as a city, but also keep our employees and the employees in the city have been doing a great job at thinking about, where we might have cost savings. We've talked about, different responses to COVID and how COVID has been impacting relationships with the college and things like this. So there's really been, and this is sad, but nothing that's really linked to the environment. The only thing that might be of interest to you all, and perhaps you read it in the paper, is that we did approve a short-term rental proposal that at this point is, I'm not sure where it's at, but it's probably close to being signed into law, which will basically give homeowners the opportunity to be able to offer their homes for short-term rentals as long as it is their primary residence. And so it's a way to try to help folks during this tough time, and in general, to use their houses for a little bit of income, like Airbnb for 2 weeks or something like that if they were gone, or for a month in the summertime if they wanted to take leave. But it's probably the most interesting thing that's kind of COVID related that we've been working on, and that's really been the focus. And I think you can kind of imagine why we're looking at huge revenue losses that we've already had, and we're going to continue to incur without SUNY Oneonta in action the way that they've SUNY Oneonta brings a lot of money. The students bring a lot of money to the city, and that point shouldn't be lost. So we're looking at big losses. And so even I think from here on out, our conversations are going to be about how do we tighten our budget, and then as we begin to plan the budget for next year, how do we account for all those revenue losses. So interesting or exciting or potential types of synergies between the environmental board just really aren't out there right now. Sorry.
No, I think we all kind of saw that one coming. It's there's not a whole. It's kind of taken up everybody's time and energy. So that is completely understood. Just maybe you went over this before, Mark, and I apologize if I can't remember. But what is the kind of the budget timetable?
Well, honestly, we're kind of in the beginning steps of this, and just beginning to learn this myself. And certainly Carrie probably knows it better than I do. Well, certainly knows it better than I do. But right now we're beginning to have the kind of introductory conversation. So our next meeting, I believe, is the 17th, in which case we're going to be talking about some of the big picture things that surround the budget, tax limit, tax caps, how much money we have that goes to the fringe benefits and wages for our employees, and the debt services. So the things that we know that we have. And so we're going to get I'm going to call it, creating a budget for dummies type of introduction from the finance director, so that the 6 new people on the council can kind of get up to speed on the budget and on the pretty much the fixed things, like wages are what they are, right? And the fringe benefits are what they are. So kind of understanding that, and then beginning to kind of build out our knowledge. But we'll be meeting now pretty regularly from here through, obviously, till the end of the year, where I think by law we have to have a budget to be voted on. I'm not sure whether that's in December or January, but regardless, we have to have a budget that we vote on and approve. So.
Okay, so that's kind of what I was trying to get at, was that so we're looking at December, early December, if we had anything that we felt that we wanted to contribute.
Oh, no. I will back that way off.
Okay.
I'm going to imagine that we're going to probably hit that phase of beginning to begin to line up things within the budget. I think we're looking at October. And that said, I've got to be really frank with you about this. And, I know that I think this was something we were going to be discussing later. Yeah, it was the new business, but you're gonna have to. I'm gonna suggest that you really kind of, if you give a large, 5 to 10 different items that you want, don't see that happening, because we're looking at some huge shortfalls for this year and potentially next, right? We don't know, but we need to plan accordingly, and we don't want to, you can't gouge it out of the taxes that a very
Right.
small percentage of taxpayers pay. So we're going to have to be really careful about what we spend. So I would say is that whatever you want to propose, you try to get the best bang for your buck and try to limit it to 1 or maybe 2 projects, and we'll go from there and see what we can do.
Okay. All right. So that, I think, so then it seems to that pending our discussion later today, then maybe by the next meeting we have some sort of better thing on there, and that we can present it to you to bring forward. So that even though it's some middle of October is when we hope to get it then to Common Council, is what we're looking
Yeah,
at.
I think, to me, again, with my kind of novice understanding of this timeline, I think beginning to think about it early and kind of putting it out there to the finance director that this
Okay.
is something that the board feels is important. I think getting that in the conversation early would be great. If we wait till December, it'll be too late. At that point, the budget will be pretty much constructed.
Okay. Fantastic. So that we'll leave the rest of that conversation to later on in the meeting.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Anything else?
No, that was about it.
That's what I kind of figured. Well, thank you and to everybody else on council and Carrie and everybody else working on this. I don't envy any of you. All right. Committee reports. Community garden. Can Kim come off the phone, or do we need to?
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Kim, well, looking at the newspaper, it was a heck of a year. So congratulations on
Yes.
getting
such good press.
Yeah. Celia Reed took care of that and contacted them, and I'm sort of sorry they didn't document it earlier as it was being put in, but it was the pandemic and people were distracted. But yeah, it was a good year. There's not much to add. I will check with the committee, the garden committee, just to make sure that there isn't anything that is wanting. I think there was something that came up in spring, but it would not, for the budget I'm thinking about. But I don't think it would be small. I'm
Okay.
sure. So we're grateful.
Sounds good. Well, yeah, no, that I remember last season there was a little worry about lots not being taken care of and not necessarily being filled out, and it was kind of and still reeling from the fees, and so it's really great to see that the gardens were so robust this year.
They were actually very good last year. Was the year, but it was as soon as they changed the fee structure back to the original. It was
Okay.
we basically, I think we were rented out last year. We kicked a couple people out and they got re-rented last time, but the only difference is this year people didn't need to get kicked out.
Okay. No, that's good. No, that's fantastic. And do you know if there are plans for expanding? I know we talked a little bit about that. Have you heard any more, or is it still just kind of wishful thinking?
Oh, well, we won't be expanding, given the way the fence was put in, we won't be expanding there.
Right.
And there is the private land. I think it's in terms of replication and following the 2030 plan, trying to get as much input as we can in terms of advice to the people over on the Fox land to help them get what they need would be good. But it won't be a city garden. It will be. It's on Fox land, so it won't be the city's problem. But hopefully they will be able to succeed at it. They need water and they need a fence.
Yeah.
What land is this? Kim, I'm not clear where you're describing the other land.
On Fifth Street, behind the AO Fox parking lot, is a flat piece that was a Girl Scout who was working on her equivalent of the Eagle. Got a kind of a late start, but had a garden laid out there, and then it more or less stalled, I think, when she realized that it started late and there was not the infrastructure she probably needed, and I think we still need to
Near Fox
encourage
Hospital.
Fox.
Is that near
Yeah.
Fox Hospital. Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
has there been talk, again, this wouldn't be on I guess on city lands, although I'm not quite sure how the school districts work. Has there been talk about collaborating with the local schools for a community garden? I know that a lot of schools like to do that, but then it's, lack of people coming back in the summertime to maintain that when all the kids are out. Has there been any talk about that? Maybe even if it sort of focused more on kind of fall crops, so that the students can participate then with maybe community members helping get it started before classes begin. Has there been any?
I don't know. I think you need some teachers and some parents who are dedicated to it even in the summer, and that they take the control. And if they want to consult with the community gardeners and see if we can be of any help, that's one thing. But I think it's really got to be led by them, because it's not going to work if we do it for them.
No, absolutely. And I guess I was just kind of thinking about how, having the expertise within the community gardeners community, while they wouldn't be the ones running it, they could be, I think that you guys have built up a really strong program now, a really strong garden, and kind of know what goes wrong and what works and what doesn't work. And I think it could be a really interesting collaboration if we can get people thinking about that. But I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, well, I would like to see, Greater Plains had a successful program due to a couple of people, I think a couple of parents, and I'd like to see Riverside do that and maybe put in a structure, like a greenhouse. Then they really actually could use it during the winter and grow vegetables during the school year, which would be more of the point.
Yes.
But if anybody starts showing an interest, they certainly know where we are. They drive by us.
All right. Excellent. Well, okay. Well, thank you, Kim.
Yep.
Okay. So, Oneonta 2030/climate smart communities. I think is kind of where we renamed this. Both Mark a few days ago got me a copy of the last time we looked at it, and then Kim a few hours ago sent it to me, and I just my mind's been elsewhere, and so I didn't get a chance. I got in them after I had sent out everything else, and so I didn't want to keep bombing people with email. So after tonight, I will email the last version that we've got, and I can't believe it was as long ago as it was in the last time this committee looked at it. I was convinced it was only a year or two ago, but apparently it was probably December of 2017 when the last time that we looked at that. I don't want to spend right now a whole lot of time going through this. I do want to point out, so hopefully you guys can see it on the screen, those of you who are on a computer, not on your phone. If you, just as a reminder for Oneonta 2030, if you got a chance to look at it, the copy that I sent out, that was the thing that was actually approved and not edited. Kind of the big things, and any Joe, Mark want to jump in on this and correct me, let me know, because I wasn't a part of this, and Tracy's not here, so he can't correct me. It seems like we broke it up. It was broken up into a couple of different goals: economic development, transportation, land use and livable communities, water management, materials management, energy, agriculture and forestry. And those were kind of the big picture things. And I have to say that as of 2017, we've done a really, really good job in the short-term goals on energy. And I can't remember, Gina, were you part of this too, that 2030?
Oh,
No, okay. I didn't want to keep you out of there if you were. I couldn't quite remember. So those check marks show that those are things that we've accomplished as a city as part of this. The little kind of arrow over here is something that is ongoing as an energy audit. I don't know where the state is. Again, this was last time we went over this. Mark kind of went through this, if I remember correctly. This was in 2017. I think we're really doing pretty well in the short-term goals. I think the task force, the Green Task Force, City Task Force, if we can never meet, can help address some of these issues as well. I think we're probably still not really great on our long-term goals, but it'd be interesting to see what comes out of the Energy Task Force from Otsego County to see what that is. We have made some inroads in, with our urban forests. I think this is, again, a place where we might be able to move forward, especially in the era of COVID-19, where people are really starting to reassess where their food comes from, where their toilet paper comes from. And so, maybe a place that we can move forward. We should definitely probably reevaluate this, assess and evaluate the use and production of Oneonta's community garden. I think we could probably move that off of a bullet point and into more of a checkpoint land. I think we're getting there, going along pretty well there. But I do think that we can think more about backyard vegetable gardens and planting fruit trees with things that bring back the nuts in Oneonta, as Gina likes to say. I think those are seems to be. I'm going to refrain from the pun. I think those are pretty reasonable things for us to try to get at, and things that we've already been talking about. I don't know where we are with the development of small-scale farms in the local area as a long-term. I think CSAs are starting to take off as well. And so maybe promoting these a little bit more, figuring out ways that the environmental board can promote it might be something that we can think about. And of course, local food ties into the trees, the fruit trees and the trees and things like that. So I'm thinking that this might be a good time to really try to figure out how to push forward. And maybe as we're thinking about a budget, things to ask for the budget, these might be ways to be able to do it. I haven't quite been able to think that out just yet. Materials management. Yeah, what?
I didn't see the goals as relate to prevent deterioration, for example. And, in these times, we need to think about the loss, not just what we're trying to plant. And talked before about our loss of trees, it's happening. So maybe some sort of goal in there that, again, prevention of significant deterioration, PSD kind of goals, as relates to our deciduous trees. Maybe that's under the management.
Yeah, that could be. That could be the developing a forest management plan for public forests. But I think you're thinking maybe a little bit bigger, broader than that, right, and not just in terms of the urban forest, maybe, but in terms of how we use the land. If we're going to start to think more.
And also, when we talk about we want to engage with the community, this is a clear kind of point of what our goal would be, is to prevent the loss of something we care about. And so a more targeted statement in there about that. And maybe we need to figure out if it's a problem or just anecdotally, it feels like there's a lot of trees being removed. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So like I said, so one thing that we can, I really, at this point, I'm just kind of giving a big overview. So, because I wasn't able to get this document out to you guys in time. So one of the things that I'm, maybe what I can do is I can, maybe put this on as a Google document for people to modify. And for those of you who might not be as happy with that, you can send the changes to me directly, and then I would put that in there. And this way here, we can kind of keep track, and we can just modify, just new ideas in red or something like that, so that we can go and look at that. Maybe questions like you had, Gina, like, is this what was part of this forest management plan, for instance? What kind of is in there? So yeah, I think that might be the next step. Mark, go ahead.
So if I could, Gina, I think you're making a good point, but so I'm kind of trying to cut the difference here. So this was what was approved by council way back, and I'm not sure when it is. So what I would recommend is, rather than trying to add new bullets, which might get funky because I don't know, then, you know, the strength of this document is that it was approved by a council and it was supposed to last forevermore. But I think to take your point, Gina, is to begin to look at how those might be embedded into some of those goals, or how we could take those goals and kind of, you know, add these kind of sub goals within them. Because then I think that there's complete control over that, if you will, to interpret the goal as you like and say, these, to meet this goal, these are the types of things that we should be doing, rather than to make a whole different change to the goal, which again would have to go back to council and have it approved. But I think that your point is spot on. Is let's have some different embedded ideas within this and how they go about doing them, and they can be about conserving and maintaining, and not just all these other new things.
Right, and I appreciate that, Mark. That's a 1 second, Dave. That's a kind of a subtle point there, and I think that's kind of where I don't want to speak for you, Gina, but that's kind of where I was thinking a little bit about this is elucidate. But yeah, so if we rethink this and we say, okay, what do we think falls under this bullet point? What are the things that we feel? Because this is just a list. This is not necessarily a document that's a prescriptive document. It doesn't tell us exactly how we're going to get there. These are just the things that have been improved. They're an important document, but now what we can do is come back in there and say, well, how are we interpreting these bullet points? What do we feel are needed to be able to achieve these goals? And so as we're adding things to the document, and again, this would be a working document just to get ideas all on the same place, so we don't have 50 different versions that we can then sit there and hash out in a meeting. So Dave.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is that probably on the forestry, we really want to break it down between the parks and the urban forest for the city streets and stuff. Engineering is heavily involved. I mean, I'll be happy to sit down with Gina and talk about all this stuff, but engineering's got to get involved with that thing too. Just throwing that out there. One other quick comment: the document that I have, Mark, goes back to the May 2015, and I don't know, was this document that old? Maybe it is 5 years. Handwriting, May 15, it's the identical one that you threw on the screen, but maybe that's an error.
I think it's older than that, but this is the version where we, as Kevin said, went through a couple of years back and looked at what we had accomplished.
If I forget one other last thing, and I'll be quiet. There's a tremendous food market up at Cooperstown, sponsored by OCCA, Otsego 2000. Excuse me, Otsego 2000 has been doing this for years as a way to promote agricultural aspect of the county. And if you ever have a chance, you should go up there some Saturday. Next street there, you got to ask a question where it is. You know, give me an email. But it's well worth looking at. And they go in the winter even, cheese, meat, spirits, beer, you name it, all kinds of critters to eat and do whatever. So it's well worth looking at as a goal, I would think, for us to maybe increase what we do here in Oneonta. Just a comment.
No, that is definitely, there are quite a few. I've heard of that one, and there are quite a few that are like that. I also want to kind of give a little bit of
They claim to be one of the top in the country, and they probably are. It's one of the things we're going to go into in Cooperstown.
I think what happened with this document is that we had started to look at this, and the plan was to do what I'm now suggesting that we do, but if I remember correctly, the rail yards hit us. It was right around that time, and we started getting distracted. There was one or two big things that were kind of coming up that took our attention, I believe, away from this for a while. And I think if I remember the timeline, it would be right around there. Maybe not. But at any rate, this is now a 3-year-old document in terms of the little check marks. The one place where 3 years ago we didn't put any check marks was under water management, and so that would be something to think about. One, to double check and see what kind of progress we might have made on that. But this is also, I think, important. I'm right now talking a lot about water management in my classes, and at the moment, I'm happy to always say that for right now, this area is doing fairly well compared to other places in the country. And I would like to be able to continue saying that for as long as I'm teaching. So this would be something that we would want to take a look at probably. We've made some goals with the land use and livable communities, the hen and rabbit ordinance, the urban forest. We've made some headway on thanks to Dave and others. And transportation seems economic development is going to be the perennial difficulty, I think. And transportation, we made a little bit of work here. We were able to promote some non-driving transportation alternatives within city and town of Oneonta. We've been making progress on bike paths. And I think we did adopt policies requiring cycling and pedestrian safe routes within all new construction projects, right? That is part of the, that we were talking about earlier on with the bike lanes and was it the Safe Streets Initiative or something like that? Was that the name of it? So I might say that we might even put like a little, if not a check mark, an arrow saying that that's ongoing.
Any info on goal 1 there? What about the fleets? Are we getting different vehicles, better vehicles, more efficient?
I
Well,
do not know about that. Mark?
I don't think it's a policy built into what we're doing. It's certainly something that's under consideration, but it's not built in as a policy.
Right. So again, I'm really just trying to hit an overview here just to kind of, and again, economic development, that's the big thing that we're always going to be chasing around. It's an incredibly important one. We've thrown out some ideas and, with the green businesses and then COVID-19 hit and it's been hard to get the college students that were part of our plan and for faculty having to teach multiple modalities in a day is taken away from that. So this is another area where we can work, and I would imagine that COVID-19 is not making things any easier on that. Mark.
And if I could, I think that there's some really interesting work in other areas going on here. So maybe it would be helpful at some point to dedicate some portion of the meeting to really kind of going through point by point. So for example, number 1 there under economic development, I can tell you that the, oh gosh, blanked on their name.
Yeah.
Joan, the group you're on.
DRI, Downtown Revital, or
No, the,
Destination Oneonta?
one more, the Chamber of Commerce. I know
I was
that
say,
there's
Joe's
been-
like, I'd be like,
Yes,
Barbara.
exactly. Yeah, different hat. But there's been a lot of talk with the chamber in terms of looking at some of these things. Now, again, I think all that's been halted clearly, but there's been some interesting synergies. When I was teaching a class last spring we were looking at food hubs, we talked a lot to the chamber. So my point is not to dwell too much on that one, but it might be worthwhile to go through and look at what things are already existing that people are working on, and maybe ways the environmental board can support it, or maybe they're fine off on their own. We can then focus on different things and not have to focus on some of these others that people are already working on.
So yeah, I agree with that. So what I'm going to propose is that I'm going to put together the document for people just to add on to that. And I would like to focus the next time we meet on, if maybe ideally like a specific goal or two, but maybe that's still a little bit too ambitious for right now. And maybe we might want to pick one of these bolded subgroups to start talking about the next time we meet, to kind of focus on whether we want to talk about economic development, transportation, any of those things. I mean, we could be putting things in the document as we think about them, but for a conversation, I'd kind of like to begin to focus this thing down a little bit. And we don't need to have an answer right now, but I'm curious, what do you guys feel is kind of where would you want to, what's the temperature of the various rooms, I suppose? Where are we thinking we might want to start this off? Or do I have to make an executive decision myself?
We should have priorities based on what will be the best impact to the goals, which are environmental protection, health of the community, those sorts of things. So those might be the harder things to work to get done, but they also might be the priorities that we should work towards in a 2030 sort of document.
No, that makes sense. So then you're saying let's focus on that, but take a broader, not restrict ourselves to just one section of the document for now. Is that kind of?
Or maybe have a discussion about priorities and what criteria by which we would set priorities.
Okay, so what I'm going to put down in my notes for new business outside of the, or maybe we'll do it part of the 2030 report, maybe, or section of this, that next time we meet, we come together with our own priorities that we're thinking, in addition to futzing around the document, because at least for me, that helps me. Also, I start to realize, what am I typing in a lot of, and then that kind of helps me out. And then next time we meet, we can start to say, what are the priorities that we want to deal with? Of these priorities, which ones do you think, now that we've got our priorities, which of these topics do we want to kind of delve more into? Does that sound like a plan for moving forward?
Prioritize is good, yeah.
Can we communicate that to our members that aren't with us today?
Yeah, I will definitely put that out there when I send out when I convert this into a Google document. When I send that out for being able to edit, I will have that agenda, and I'll do that in the next couple of days, so that we're not I'm not telling you like the Monday before we meet next time. I'll try to be kind. I did want to get back on the bees thing earlier, but all of a sudden I had to make sure I had to get cleared by Stephen that it was going to be okay to talk about. So, okay, I just wanted to kind of share this part of the document with everybody and make sure that we've seen some of the stuff that's in there. It is a fantastic bit of work, and I do think that it is important to always remind ourselves what Mark is reminding us about always, which is that this has actually been voted on and approved by Common Council at one point or another. And so therefore, if we stay within that, it gives us a little bit more, for one, we should be doing something in it because of all the work that was done in it. It is now a guiding document that's been voted on. And I think when we think about it that way, it should help. We should think about it in those terms so that we can use this document to our advantage and be like, hey, look, you already said this is our interpretation of how this thing goes on here. You guys, the city's already approved it. Let's figure out how we're going to get this to work. Okay, so that took a bit more than I had anticipated. Well, I didn't really anticipate anything, to tell you the truth. Okay, so
Shit.
Whoops.
That's all right.
I lost it.
That's okay. That happened at one of our Unitarian services. Somebody logged in and immediately said the same thing.
Open support.
So, okay, I know you're not really part of Urban Forest. Have you heard anything that you want to report on that?
I'm sorry, you're talking to me?
Yeah.
Okay, we do have, as I mentioned last week, I was not here at the opening because I couldn't figure out how to get on the darn thing. We do have 20 trees which will be delivered not in 2021, but in 2022. There'll be 20 elm trees. So we got those paid for, and they will arrive in 2 years. So I guess they're paid for. So I'm trying to look for sites for those at the moment. Other than that, secondly, I guess making sure that in all the budgetary stuff, we must have someone keep an eye on trimming the trees. I mean, the city engineering knows this and their danger issues and all that, but it's got to come up, Mark, in any kind of budgetary stuff and a subheading under the engineering, definitely tree trimming, that kind of stuff. So that's what all I have to say.
Okay. Fantastic. So, Lucille's not here for city plantings. I don't have. Does anybody have anything about community outreach engagement? I think again we're all overwhelmed by COVID-19.
Well, I can throw something out here that doesn't really tie in. I was waiting to throw this out tomorrow night, and I think I sent all of you an email on it, maybe 2 emails. Huntington Park has been going through a process, and I was asked to be on it. Don't ask me why, but they have got a very prestigious landscape engineering firm out of Boston, and they've been here once or twice and have come up with this plan. Tomorrow night would be a good chance if you're interested in it. Huntington Library, apparently they have some funding, I guess, and they kind of consider themselves to be a bit autonomous from the rest of the city. And none of my business there at all. I'm not involved with that. But you want to see what's going on tomorrow night. You've got the email I think I sent you today.
Is this the Stimson Landscape Architects for
that is correct. That is correct. So if you want to find out what's going on with Huntington Park, I guess tomorrow night's your chance to find out.
All right. Fantastic. Okay. So we are now through that, and we can get to old business. Oh, did somebody say something? Or did I just... Okay. So what I'd like to do now is... I keep thinking I'm hearing somebody trying to say something to me.
Feedback.
What?
It's feedback from that call.
Okay. All right. As I'm trying to change documents, I can't quite see if anybody's talking, and I certainly don't want to talk over anybody. So as I was getting ready to put together stuff that we had discussed from what Gina had sent us for I believe it was the Pennsylvania sample code, I got an email from Mark saying that Stephen Yearley had seen our minutes, I guess, so somebody reads them, and saw that we were talking about bees, and he's like, hey, by the way, I have some draft amendments to the bee and chicken code, and I said, oh, wow, okay, can I share them? And he said, yes, that's why he does them, and that he really wants to share them. He feels better having it come through various boards and committees for various obvious political reasons. But I just wanted to make sure I didn't want to get anybody into trouble, so that's why it took me a while to. I've learned sometimes it's best to wait a while and make sure you're not going to accidentally get anybody in trouble. So I apologize for that delay. So. I'll get back to him on the chickens. I just wanted to send the whole thing out so that we can see the context in which Stephen has been thinking about all of this. And so what we're sharing right now, I got the added bits that he would have. To me, it looks as if it got most of all the things that we thought were pretty important. A permit would be required, which we had talked about. That he was saying that that for a residential parcel, either if a single family or multiple dwelling in the city, the lot sizes are really not that big, so no more than 2 apiaries should be allowed. To me, that seems reasonable. We might want to change that, because I know there was some conversation last time, I think Gina and Tracy were both saying it, about for if, say, the schools wanted to do that, and we got some bigger land, and we might be able to expand on that. I don't know. We can talk about that in a second. The hive has to be in a removable frame or top bar hives. And if it's going to be on a rental property, got to get the authorization by the property owner. There is a setback. It needs to be in the backyard as well. It should not be located near a pre-existing kenneled animal. I would have to double check what that means. Would that mean like my dog? I don't know. the extent possible, hive entry shall face away from the closest neighboring property in such a direction that bees fly across the beekeeper's property at sufficient distance to gain a height of at least 6 feet. So basically, for my instance, I have a narrow yard. I'd put it in the middle of my yard if I were to do that. And by the time they got to my fence, they would have to get above 6 feet to be able to get out. So there's usually flyaway barriers, which is then what is also talked about in Part 5. That could be a hedge, it'd be a fence, anything that's going to be roughly 6 feet tall that the bees have to kind of fly over, so they're not going to just like go zooming past you. Water needs to be required on site. No bee comb or other materials may be left exposed. All colonies must be maintained with queens selected from stock breed for gentleness and non-swarming characteristics. The beekeeper must promptly requeen the colony with another queen. And I think that is pretty much everything to do with bees.
I have a couple of comments.
Yes.
If we're ready for that.
Yeah, I am.
They, most of these do dovetail with the Pennsylvania code, the model code. I had a couple of questions that under 4, for example, location of hives.
Mm-hmm.
No front yard is common, but side yard is not in the model code. And I can think of lots of places where you got a big side yard and not so much rear yard. So we might just say front yard, no front yard. Or we might flesh that out why. So that's not in the standard one. And then under D, 10 feet from any buildings, we get, what's a building? Is that my shed? Is that, so that was one sort of maybe a legal issue. There are also tree hives are less standard, but folks out west use tree mounted hives. I'm not an expert, but that would be a question under number 3. Sorry, that's under 3.
Oh, that's okay.
And might we add to number 7 or consider, these are the no-nos, what you can't do. No abandoned hives left out or something about that. The final one under 8, we don't say anything about bee disease. That is common in the New York City, the Pennsylvania, et cetera. But we might say a requirement to report if the hive has died or is diseased. So hive death or disease must be reported when you get your permit.
I think that would make sense.
I would say hive, not bee disease.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
So hive disease or hive death must be reported. I think that makes sense. I feel like that is also something that was somewhere in the hens.
In the chickens.
But I can't remember. I do like the idea of being able to say, hey, there's this thing that's happening. One, just so that I think it helps encourage people to take care of their bees. And I also think that it would be important. I think it is actually in the New York State Code. There is a few New York State Code things on bees that suggest that it would help in being able to know whether or not there's something that is infecting our bee, right? So if it's just an isolated hive death or hive disease and we don't see anything else, then just, bad luck, I guess. Mm-hmm. But if you start to see that there's, 2, 3, 4 hives and they're starting to cluster together geographically, then that might be an alert to know that, there might be something really bad happening. And so I think going back to what you were kind of talking about with not taking away kind of things from only out to 2030, the idea of sustainability and maintenance and care, I think we want to make sure that we keep those ideas always in the forefront, that it's not just like, oh, we have this thing, it's we have this thing, how do we make sure that we're taking care of it? Anybody else? I mean, so
Kevin?
yeah, Kim.
Hi.
Yes.
I like the idea that you said something about schools might want to keep hives. That I know that when we put in the grant for the community garden, Judy Penguin was all keen on having bees at the community garden. So I'm thinking, and we kind of, at that point saying, are you kidding me? But if there can be written in such a way that makes clear what happens if a group wants to get permission to do this on city or school district property, on public property, I guess you'd say, that, getting it into the code from the start probably makes sense. I don't know how you would, how that might be handled but I think it should be an option.
Right. I think, Gina, if I remember correctly, the Pennsylvania code had something about it was scaled with lot size.
Yeah.
And so I understand that maybe we don't need that because most city lots here tend to be small, but maybe we can put a threshold saying that if it's above a certain thing, such as, or, if it's a school or some other thing that has enough land, maybe we can then cross that threshold and, up it to 4 or something like that.
It's also a rooftop in some places. So there foreseeably could be a business that wants to go in that direction. But we're not there yet, I don't think.
No, but I think as Kim pointed out just now, like if we're going to have something in here, if we're going to kind of limit some things, we want to make sure that we're going to have the ability, if we can think of some things that might actually conceivably happen. And I can imagine, like the Green Earth or something, wanting to put some hives on top of their building, or a few other places on around town where I can imagine there's some nice spaces where you might be able to do that. I kind of would rather not have to go through all of this. Again, I don't want to catch every last little thing, but if there's some obvious exceptions that we might want to encourage, or at least not get in the way of. Yeah, Joan?
I think that limiting to 2 is probably too restrictive, because there are lots in the city that are acre plus.
Okay.
So I think you don't need to limit the number. It's, how appropriate the setting is for the hive.
Okay. So I'll go back and take the language from I believe it's the Pennsylvania code, where it's scaled with lot size. And, these were just Stephen's ideas. I mean, I take it a little bit, given his job as code enforcer.
Right.
I feel like he's got a little bit of all of us, probably a pretty good handle on things on this. But I'm also, so my idea is to float these ideas, get his feedback on what he thinks about this, and we can still move forward as we think. I prefer the scaling myself, but I rather have a little bit of back and forth and just get his ideas. Maybe we're missing something, and there's a reason. Yeah, Gina.
I think the other thing, I haven't read it in detail, but the other thing that I would be concerned about is the hives on rental properties. I know that we're saying there needs to be a permit, but when push comes to shove, is the landlord really going to take responsibility if something doesn't go right?
Yes.
That really should be spelled out or thought through in detail.
Yeah, I think in other codes that I've seen, they have that kind of language about the rental property. So what exactly would you, not the exact wording, but what specific issue are you? I think I know, but I don't want to type for you.
The concern is hives at rental properties. What kind of enforcement mechanisms exist if they're not cared for properly?
Right. And in particular, we might even want, and I don't know if we can make this thing, one thing that comes to mind is that there's a big difference between the rental property on one side of my house, where it is a long-term rental, where it's not to students. And then you go 2 houses down and it's a student rental property, and they're only there for, 9 months out of the year. Who's going to take care of the bees after that?
Right. Yep.
Okay. No, those are good points. Gina, I think you were going to say something.
Oh, I was just going to mention that the approach in the model code is to say there are exceptions. And so under hive density, so that might be where the exceptions could include a proposal from a business or a proposal from an institutional beekeeping operation.
Right, and you can apply to be accepted.
Right.
Okay, that I like that thing there, is that we can have some sample exceptions. If you feel that you're a part of this, then you can apply, you can make your case.
To Stephen,
Okay.
probably, right? Yeah, to Stephen would be the driver of that, yeah.
Well, somebody would. I don't know exactly who that would be, but somebody for sure.
Not the environmental board, I don't think, but.
We have no authority. We can't do anything. We can just advise, and that's it. Yes, Gina.
This is, I think, a good example of where, if we're going to suggest this, that we need to also get out in front with communicating with our community about the bees and about why this makes sense. And people don't even know the difference between a bee and a, yellow jacket. And so instead of waiting for the uproar, we try to get out there and communicate the idea at farmers markets, etc. Maybe work with Destination Oneonta. Again, so that we educate before people get afraid.
Yeah, concerning the uproar over the chickens, I would imagine this would be a bigger one. Yeah, and so I think regarding that, I think what I kind of want to do is get the kind of proposed code, and it'll get changed, of course. I mean, we can't write code. We can't do anything like this. I'm just trying to make it as simple as possible. I think that's what we're trying to do here, for Common Council to have something ahead in front of them that they can work with and amend. I kind of want to get this into shape, and then before we put it forward to the appropriate committee, maybe then we can start to think about how we might want to do that. Would we want to? I mean, yeah, farmer market season is, well, I guess we're always there. We just move a little bit indoors, but we probably want to have something like that pretty soon. Same with Destination Oneonta, I guess. I guess we can start looking for some things that people have already used, other communities, and try to adopt that. It'd be nice to have something other than Coronianta. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that, but here we are. Yes, Mark.
If I could also, I think it's a great point, and I think that you can also utilize your Common Council members. So after this is worked out, and I think the idea of working this closely with Stephen is good, you'd bring this to the legislative committee. And generally at these, there is an opportunity, I think there'd be an opportunity to speak, but if not, certainly at Common Council, it's just a good opportunity. You can put it forward, but to have somebody representative of the environmental board there to say, here's why we're doing this. This is the logic behind this. This is a well thought out proposal. This came from a petitioner. We crafted this language, and here's our logic. Because a lot of times some of the calls that will come in from the public go right to the Common Council members, and they can be the ones to begin kind of, talking about why they think this is a good, a good way to go, and kind of sell that to people as well. So I agree, your markets in different places and DO, but also use your Common Council as a kind of a mouthpiece, if you will, for some of these particular ideas, if it's to be passed.
Right. That was kind of my idea, is that we wouldn't just send this off to you guys without one of us being present and making the case. And I think one thing that I hadn't really thought about, though, the advantage to doing that, I was thinking just in case people were around and be a part of the record, but by educating Common Council members and the history behind this proposal and why we think it's a good idea and all that, it then gives them the talking points and so on, so that if they're getting phone calls or emails from their constituents who are just like, oh, what's going on? What is this thing? They can then speak a little bit more confidently about what's going on, rather than, oh, hold on, let me get back to you on this. I don't know. This is the first time I've ever heard of it. Okay.
Do we want to have a public hearing or a public meeting so that people can air their pros and cons before we have the council present this to council and kind of build a coalition of support?
Yeah, that can go either way, right?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if the environmental board is the place for that. Maybe.
We could
I
have
think at a
BN.
minimum.
We could have a BN.
Yeah.
We can all dress up in little bee suits.
Be happy.
Yes.
There is, if I could, there is merit in that from the standpoint that the environmental board, I mean, you could shape the narrative of a conversation if you're laying this out. So what would happen, and I'm pretty confident that this is the case, because this is an ordinance change, it would have to go to council. Council would then approve it, and then there'd have to be a public comment period that's usually held in the meeting following the meeting it was voted on by the council. So it's not voted in once it's voted on the council. It has to have a public comment period to kind of public hearing. And then the mayor, after that public hearing, would or would not vote it into being a local ordinance. So I think it's an opportunity to be able to kind of frame the argument or the discussion prior to that. It certainly would help to educate people, inform people, and perhaps have a positive resolution to this.
Right. So you're saying, in addition to the one that the public hearing that already has to happen, we have one before we put it in front of council. What I'm trying to wrap my head around is, how do we get that word out? Our agendas have been talking about bees for the last 3 months, and the only person that's brought it up to our attention is a city employee. What other levers do we have for promoting this? Because this is not something that I've seen since I've been on the board. We've certainly had people come and talk to us about a lot of stuff, but I don't recall promoting anything. Dave?
Yeah, I guess, do we anticipate a lot of objection? I mean, the main thing is people are afraid they're going to get stung. What other objections there are?
Dave, there was newspaper articles written about the chickens. So, there was quite a bit of tension about hens in the city of Oneonta.
Okay.
So
we did this, of course, many years ago when they talk about the fracking. We got a lot of stuff, and the burning plant. The environmental board just decided to publicize, and there were a lot of people interested to publicize. We would have a dedicate 3 different of our environmental board meetings once a month to discussion of that, and we had experts come in at each of the 3 meetings and discuss the pros and cons. It was worked out really well, and that the developer backed off finally, but that was a big deal, much bigger deal to me than the bees.
Sure. Oh, I agree. Gina?
We should think about partnering with the Leatherstocking Beekeepers Association. They're the experts.
There we go. We can actually invite them maybe to the next board meeting, and we can put that into the agenda, and maybe Carrie, later on, you can tell me maybe some better ways, maybe other ways of getting this out to the people. We don't have to do that right. Oh, she came off mute. She's going to talk to us.
just to touch base, your agenda is distributed to the media at large. It goes to print, television, and radio media. Perhaps a special note or some sort of message from the environmental board that indicates that it'll be an informational session for a piece of legislation that you'll be proposing to the legislative committee. That way, I mean, if I'm not being too forward, that way the community feels they have some buy-in on this and it's not just a surprise.
That's why I brought your name up. I figured you'd have some ideas.
We can also put it on social media too.
Yeah, the press might be interested. I mean, they don't have a lot of new stuff to talk about, apparently. They might be delighted to have some little different thing to talk about.
Which actually makes me, yeah, I have to think a little bit about that. But why doesn't the environmental board have a social media presence? Is that something we're not allowed to do? Is it something that nobody's ever thought of before? Is it somebody that doesn't want to deal with it? I don't know.
Social media?
Yeah, you know, a Facebook page.
Oh, I don't know. It takes time to do it. Who wants to do it?
I don't mind doing it, and a bunch of us can be part of it. It's not like that all has to be one person. I'm just curious as if there's anything saying that we can't.
I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't be linked from and to the city website since we are an official board.
Yeah. Mark, who do you think I should talk to about that?
About which part? About linking it to the website or about having a Facebook page?
Facebook page for now.
I'd say, I would imagine she's probably on the line, Carrie, but I don't see any reason why that would be a problem. Carrie's like, she runs the city. Let's just call it what it is. But yeah, Carrie, what are your thoughts? That's nothing problematic, right?
I don't see any reason. The Commission on Community Relations and Human Rights does have a page. It's a relatively active page. The one thing and the big thing to consider when you are doing a Facebook page, is that you are at all times representative of the city of Oneonta. It also becomes a government page, which means that comments cannot be deleted. It becomes a matter of viewpoint discrimination. So sometimes, as incredible as it is, and it gets the information out there, and 95% of the time the constituents and community are phenomenal, you will have that 5% that will make you say, why did I do this? So I mean, if you are, and I say this generally, if you are able to accept the criticism that will likely come from any government page, then I think, I mean, I love social media. I manage 5 pages. It's a wonderful thing and it's a great tool, and it would be a big benefit, especially if you're partnering with Leather Stocking, to share content and bring information to the public as you move forward, not only with this project, but others.
That's what I was thinking. And so, okay. Yeah, I'll talk to you, Carrie, a little bit separately on that, and then we can bring it back to the board about that. I just want to make sure I understand anything, and I don't want to get too far off topic from the business of bees.
Yeah, definitely touch base. We can talk about it.
All right, fantastic. It's good to know. Okay, so anything else about this document that we want to talk about before moving on? The next bit on this that I just wanted to bring to people's attention was the concept of the bee city. That is a actual thing somewhere. I had it set up. But basically, here we go. So it's kind of like any of these other things. I forget the it's a way of being able to create a community around bees and talking about all this. There's some, I don't know how much it would really ultimately help us, but it does would help with the community, bringing it together in terms of helping get beekeeping off the ground. And kind of would recognize the fact that the community is committed to this and collaborating. I think it would cost the city like $200 or something like that for a city our size a year. That's beyond our what we can do, but we might want to take a look at bcityusa.org and talk about that next time when we're putting the final touches on what we're thinking about asking for the budget. So,
Kevin?
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to say something because actually I thought I really appreciated that this seemed very responsive to my concern about native bees, because it's really different from beekeeping. It's really about, as far as I can see, it's about cultivating native bees. And so I appreciate that. When I started reading, and I couldn't get that much information, yeah, I did have a problem or a question about what it was going to cost on a month annual basis, because that wasn't obvious to me. But it does require a lot of commitments, it seemed to me. And it's kind of a bigger undertaking than just saying we're a bee city. And I'm wondering, maybe it's partly I don't know about the timing right now, given what Mark is saying about where the city's brain is. But one of the things is you need to start a committee of some sort, and I'm not quite sure who that committee would be. Sort of an ongoing committee that would help foster habitat, et cetera, which you can actually do without becoming a bee city. If you want to cut costs and not feel like you have to be accountable every year on how much land has been put into pollinators and such. I'm just a little careful about getting into something that commits us to actions without really knowing how we would do it. So I hope when we talk about it again, we'll think about, okay, is the city really, does anybody in the city and the employees, do they really have time to worry about this kind of thing in terms of plantings? If not, what volunteer group would do it? I know the garden club struggles, I think, at this point. So I think we should proceed cautiously, but I really appreciate the idea that we would do something for native bees.
Well, yes. The good news is that we can't really do anything, so we cannot commit the city to anything. I really just wanted to kind of bring it to the group's attention, particularly because it does have some stuff about native bees and thinking beyond just beehives, but things that we have been talking about and things that are already part of what we talk about, community gardens, part of city plantings and things like that. And this was just to I just wanted to throw that out there and have that be something that you guys can look at. And I think that it is premature. I think until we actually can, I think the time to really look at this would be if we actually get an ordinance passed that would do that, or if we don't, then this could be another way, a way of attacking the issue, so to speak, is to think about, well, okay, if we're not going to allow beehives in the city, how might the city be able to help our pollinators? And so it can either be something that we look at down the road after we have this ordinance, or it can be another way to help the pollinators. Like I said, I don't want to I wasn't planning on spending a whole lot of time on this particular point. I just wanted to bring it to folks' attention. I think maybe it was Tracy who brought it up last month. I can't quite remember.
It's me.
Or it was I knew it was Gina or Tracy. I couldn't quite remember. Somebody at the SUNY end of the table.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
I agree with Kim that it's probably too early on this, but the requirements also to reduce pesticide use, that's something that we would be interested in looking at more broadly. And I don't know to what degree the city already tries to do that. But again, that's definitely up there in terms of our quality of water issues. So it's a cross-cutting point of of interest for me, and something I think a lot of folks in the community also care about. Again, what are we using? What are other folks using in the habitats, and particularly as relates to these neonics and other kinds of pesticides that are of concern.
Right, and I think again, it's one of the another thing that speaks to your concern about maintaining and not degrading, right? And so this would be something else. Like I said, I think that this is more of an idea that we can revisit in a couple of months. But I just wanted to kind of have it in the back of our heads to look at and take and think about. All right, so the last thing on our agenda is new business. And I just left that again as city budget suggestions. We already had Dave. Thank you very much for reminding us again the importance of making sure that we have somebody on staff and paid for in the city to maintain the trees that we do have, at the very least for safety concerns and for city plant health concerns as well. One thing that Mark had sent forward as an idea earlier on, and I think Lucille's also been talking about it on and off, maybe even Kim, the idea that maybe we really need, the city needs to invest on Main Street on some better recycling / trash bins that are a little bit easier to understand, or maybe better sorted. Maybe one that's for paper, one for plastic and can, one for trash, or maybe one of them compostable. And maybe this is something that if we just keep it on Main Street and we're thinking, 4 or 5 bin stations that are a little bit better. I don't know how many that would be. Maybe that would not be too overly expensive to put into the budget. So that would be one idea. And of course, the tree maintenance. And I think, so any other ideas that you guys might have? And we can hold this off and have now that we've had a bunch of discussions about Oneonta 2030, we've had some ideas about beekeeping, and we've have some budget ideas that we've already brought on. If we wanted to think about this again in October, which would be, of course, the last meeting before we could do anything. Any other ideas that we can think about before we move, that we can then think about in the next month before our next meeting?
I just throw out some other idea. This would be kind of an announcement, I guess, if we're at the end of the meeting. I did listen in on the County Energy Task Force meeting yesterday morning, and it was mainly designed for businesses to fill out a form, how much energy they're using, et cetera, et cetera. Barbara, I guess her name, I mispronounced her name. Barbara ran head of the.
Yeah, Barbara
Hegan, okay, was moderator, and she had on board was Michael Farrell, Otsego County Board of HEI, second Wayne Muller, third one was a Jim Yenger, Yengner. Last one would be Bennett Sandler. It was an interesting meeting. They indicated that there are 1,600 businesses in Otsego County, and they're hoping to get a return on the questionnaire of 200 to 300 people. According to the newspaper this morning or yesterday, Barbara Ann indicated that there were 23, I guess, people that responded so far. Very interesting approach, rather than, just trying to see what businesses are doing for energy. And this is part of the Energy County Task Force. Mark, do you know anything else that's going on with the Otsego County Energy Task Force? I've lost track of it.
Well, so that's a subcommittee of the task force that was doing that inventory to understand needs, just as we, and I'm saying Gina, you and I, as part of the environmental subcommittee, are working on our own task. That's the task. I think Barbara Ann Hegan, I think she shares that. I think she co-chairs that with somebody else. They're running that particular subcommittee. So that's what that is. That's an arm of that. They're still on track to, I think we need to have some type of draft report, our draft report to the the chairs of the committee or the
Okay.
steering committee by mid-October, late October. I think that's what's still there. There's going to be a meeting later on next week to really kind of get everyone up to speed, and we should find out more information there. I will not be able to go, but I think Gina will be going representing our committee.
Could you send me I've lost track of how to get on board the Google for our subcommittee. If you could send me that contact information, I'd appreciate it.
Sure will. And we're trying to set up a meeting for the next week or the week after. We've been a little behind on things.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Kevin, could I bring a new business up? And I was thinking about putting this into the council report, but this is a little different. The mayor approached me and wanted to know if there was anybody who would be interested in being a kind of a complete street champion, if you will. He doesn't feel that we have kind of complete street, that we need a little bit more awareness of complete street. We need somebody to kind of be that champion who reminds the council, reminds city about the complete streets. And in talking with him, I thought that it might be, since this was the board that really originated that idea and kicked it through to the council, that there might be some interest either by somebody on this board or this board in general as being the kind of complete streets champion, as the kind of conscience about complete streets in terms of reminding us about that. So I kind of dropped it on your laps to maybe consider. And at some point, the mayor would like to have, just yay or nay. And if not, he'll have to look for another champion. But again, I thought that this was the kind of natural place because it was brought out from this particular board.
What is it? Sorry.
Yes, no problem. Complete streets, and I'll try to give you my best explanation of it, is it's a way of thinking about the ways in which pedestrians, cyclists, walkers of all, joggers, everybody, cars interact within public spaces. Most of it centers around street and street usage. There's a lot of kind of science on these. So for example, let's say you have a troublesome crosswalk where people keep blowing through it, then Complete Streets has recommendations on how you might set up a crosswalk, how you might, especially it's also within new projects. So one of the things that, and Greg Matthijs, our city engineer, has jumped on this and has been utilizing complete street thinking when he's been working on projects. So for example, if there's an opportunity to create a bike lane, it's just the entire thinking. It's trying to think about streets and street systems within a city as being more than just cars. Because when we think about streets, we only think about cars and how the cars are going to interact in these spaces. And Complete Street says, wait, let's stop that. Let's actually take the car and put it on an equal level to everybody else. And let's think about how everybody might interact with these particular areas and what's the best way to set things up so that we assure the safety of everybody involved. So it's a more comprehensive look at street development and urban development rather than just let's throw down the blacktop and let the cars go through at 50 miles an hour.
I think that is certainly a thing that the committee board can do either as a group or as an individual. I'm going to reach out to the mayor and find out exactly what he sees as the champion doing. And that might help us inform whether or not we want to do that as a board or if a member of the board wants to do something. Just because I'm not clear exactly when I was the champion of Navigate, I got stuck, holding a placard out on, that's just some artwork thing, guys, never mind. And so I just kind of want to get in, and I don't know exactly how much championing that accomplished. So I just kind of want to know what exactly it is the mayor would like.
Yeah, no, good call. My apologies for not having more information on that. That's
not your fault. So I think before we commit, or unless somebody wants to commit all in on that, I'm not going to stop you.
My suggestion would be put it as a definite item we bring up every meeting at the environmental board. Just throw it on there, so don't let it slither by. Okay. I just want to throw out a question here. We did get, based on the streets program, we did get the city to agree to paint lanes from Fox Hospital all the way out to the east end. And I assume that Matthijs is working on that, or will do it when the time comes. I know they're doing an awful lot of work, other work on the roads. We could just send a note to him to remind him that the painting gets done before fall. Because that was something that came out of this Complete Streets program.
Yeah.
Right.
But we need to follow through with that, or otherwise, I think that I think we would want to, as a board, kick that around more and more, frankly, and just make sure we discuss it. It's an important thing. We really are the ones that would be pushing for it more than any other board I'm aware of.
Yeah,
Right. No, and I think that's true. I just want to kind of set up an information pipeline, I guess. If we don't know that there's a problem. So I guess that's why I just want to know kind of more what the mayor is thinking. Are we going to have to generate the discussion, or is the discussion going to be developed somewhere else and we help advocate it? I just kind of want.
Discussions already happened, I think. Excuse me for interrupting, but I think the discussions already happened and the city did approve it.
Right. No, I'm not talking about that. That's a done deal. I think what Mark is talking about with the mayor is moving forward on other projects. Because if the reason that this is still a discussion on Main Street is because it was kind of forgotten, and then we were able to use the Complete Streets as a little nudge to get something happening. I think it sounds like maybe the mayor wants that to not have to almost wait to the last minute, that it wants to be more part of the everyday conversation. So I'll talk to him about that and find out. I put a note in here. Okay.
So really quickly, I'm sorry, Kevin, I can't speak for the mayor, but for example, right now, one committee is looking at traffic calming in particular areas. It might be helpful, a champion might be able to say, we'll go back and we will research some traffic calming measures in particular neighborhoods to make recommendations. I think it just helps to take some of the responsibility off the staff as being the only ones that have this kind of knowledge. So that's my thinking. But yeah, speak with Mayor Herzig and he can be able to clarify that.
Okay. All right. So in the next couple of days, keep an eye out for the Google Doc with the 2030 updates on it, as it were. For the next time, we'll start making little notes to yourself, keeping in mind that we want to think about this as advancing an already signed off document by Common Council, that we want to think about during the next meeting, that what are our priorities for addressing Oneonta 2030 in the next decade, and then kind of think of some budgetary items again, and we'll come back to the Bs as well. I'll reach out and we'll find out what we got, and I will have a conversation with Carrie about Facebook and so on and things like that. So is there anybody else? Anybody help? We've gone through the agenda, so we can go without a vote, but I just want to make sure that we haven't missed anybody. All right. Well, I guess that's it. I will call this meeting at an end at 8:38. Kind of like the old days. All right.